Alright, so I'm on a job here to clean out this back pile from this yard. Basically, it's full of rocks and stumps and dirt and everything, and the goal is to kind of separate the rocks out to one side and spread the dirt where we can, as well as pull some really old rotted stumps. And I have the E42 on this job during the weekend that I'm demoing it. So there's a couple stumps up here that are really old and rotted. I'm sure the ripper will probably blow these things apart, no problem, because these shouldn't have much left underneath them, just the weight of the root ball. And then there are a few stumps that are just kind of, all kind of cut off at ground level that I'll probably pick at to get rid of in the center. And maybe if it's going good, I'll take these ones out on the side because they're all pretty old and rotted. But there's just a lot of rock back here, a lot of random stumps. The goal is to mainly get rid of this pile in the dead center of the yard. My only concern is I might not be able to do anything about this double stump that's right here in the side of the pile. So I might be able to bring the grinder and grind this down, because I'm actually doing work for the neighbor as well, and that's the only way I can get back here is through the neighbor's yard, and then like a 6-foot opening back here, because there are multiple fences in this yard that lead up to the front. So you can't get a machine from the front of this yard to the back. I'm sort of limited as to, what material I can get in here and how I even get the machine in here. So the goal will be to try and do everything with what we have today. Alright, that pretty much clears out this pile. I screened it as best as I could with just the bucket. You know, there's a bunch of 4 or 5 inch stuff still in here that I'll pack in. I got a bit of decent material left, so I'll use this to fan out in this area a little bit more, as well as fill in a hole over there. But before I spread anything out, I'll first put on the root ripper and try and tackle these stumps and the ones on the other side of the shed. All right, so they said the area sunk over here. I know why. There's probably a whole bunch of stumps buried right here, because as soon as I started breaking the roots on this, it was just pouring water out. That's a big problem with when you bury stumps. They not only decay, but they just hold water in those holes, and it becomes just a caved out mess. And that's why I don't like burying stuff, and if I ever bury stuff, I bury it off to the side or in the woods or somewhere that they're never gonna build any kind of structure over. And I specifically tell people if I'm burying it, you can't put anything over it. And unfortunately, this is towards the back of the property, but it's like right in the pathway to the shed. So this is kind of a mess now right here. I'm probably gonna have to dig up this whole area now, but I'll go talk with the homeowner to see how they want me to handle this. And I'll come from this side to grab this stump. All right, so we think that when this basketball court was put in like 15, 20 years ago, this was all woods and the back area wasn't developed. So I'm thinking that when they dug that out, took all the stumps, they just buried them right on this side, both in that spot and over here. It's starting to pump out water. So I'm gonna go ahead and dig this out some more and kind of find how many stumps are in there, so that hopefully, you know, they can have a walking path to their shed as well as this back area and not just have it be a huge swamp. All right, I've pretty much maxed out the digging with this thing. I think I'm reaching like 13 feet down with the teeth on that, and it's still not bottoming out. So the only option we really have with this size machine and the access to this lot is just to backfill this with all those rocks I separated, so we get a solid base in there that's eventually going to sink down more till it hits something solid. You know, and then we'll just keep filling on top of that, because at least that stuff won't decay. It's just kind of whatever the base is down there that I can't see, that's going to keep sinking a bit more until we hit solid ledge or just more solid material. So I'm going to go grab my skid steer so that I can track those rocks over here and kind of move everything around a bit more efficiently, because it's going to take forever moving it with just the excavator. Alright, I am back with the skid steer, grapple, and bucket. So I'm going to just be taking everything I filtered out on that side, tracking it over and dumping it in the hole. I'll set you guys up so you can just watch all those rocks plop right into the water. Alright, so the hole is all filled in. Put all the rocks I could on the bottom, pretty much everything I pulled out this morning. And then I took kind of a mixture of the clay and top material from this side of the hole that I had pulled out that was dry, and mixed it together. And that'll eventually bleed out down there. I didn't put back anything of the stuff behind that tree, which was kind of just all the real decayed stuff. So everything I put down there shouldn't really decay anymore. Unfortunately, I do believe this will still sink because I couldn't find the bottom, and there's probably more stuff with all the water down there. However, we've got a good base of rock that it'll all sit down on, and then just adding material on top of this will be the play at that point. So I'm going to leave this swaled out over here and clean it up so that any water that builds up in that hole still, once it gets up to this top 1 or 2 feet, it's going to be able to bleed out that way, hopefully, and not leave this like a big mud puddle. And then all this material in the back here the best thing I can think to do with it right now is to just kind of pull it in between here and there and just lay it out flat, because it's just so sloppy that I can't really do anything with it, and there's not really another good spot to put it on this site. So kind of just fanning it out in this area I think is going to be what I'll do. Alright, got everything cleaned up on my way out. It was a lot easier to use the excavator for that because there's so much rock and random stumps in here. Trying to do any work with the skid steer is just a nightmare on my back, and also doesn't really smooth out too nicely. So it's nice to just be able to boom around and smack in rocks and throw them out of the way. But got the pile cleaned out. I didn't even bother with those two stumps because they're pretty big, as well as I ended up having to do a whole bunch of extra stuff here, so I didn't really have the time to mess around with it. And we got the material spread out that we dug out. That'll dry and drain this way, which will be good. And then over here we got the whole stump hole filled in. It's still a bit wet, but it should all dry out over the coming week. It's not supposed to rain, it's supposed to be pretty warm. And then we'll see how this goes over the next year. So I imagine it'll sink some, but it'll be a lot more stable underneath once everything settles down. So this yard is done for now, but I imagine I'll probably be back to either pull some more stumps or add some more material into low spots.